Hey everyone, it's Augustus. So, today I'm not just going to go off and ramble. Today's going to be about, it's going to be about a story. A couple stories, actually. And I'm going to talk about how I got my scars. I have a scar on my chin. You can't really see it. Well, you can if I do that. Right there, right? Sometimes I have trouble finding it because of all my facial hair, but it's really noticeable if I don't shave. So, when I was 3 years old, this scar on my chin, as you can see, I got this scar when I was 3 years old. Most people say, oh, well, that doesn't really, qualify as a story because you don't remember it. Oh, yes, I do. I do remember it very clearly. I remember that I was spinning around in my living room, goofing around. I was playing with a couple older kids that happened to live across the street. They used to come over and they would like I don't want to say play full-fledged soccer, but they would kick soccer ball. Now this is before I had my heart surgery, but that's the other story I'll tell. So I might. I might break this vlog segment up into two parts. I don't know, but the first story is I was 3 years old and I was spinning around, goofing around, and the two kids that lived across the street. I don't remember their names. That's the problem. So, being that young, I may or may not remember everything, but what I do remember is when I was goofing around, I was spinning around and I stopped and I went to take a few steps and I lost my balance. And at the end of our couch, we had a table and I lost my balance and I hit my chin right on the corner of that table and it split my chin clear to the bone. And I ended up, well, we had just moved to Hanford, and this was like 2 weeks after we moved to Hanford. My parents didn't really have a doctor, so they had to pick up a phone book and call the non-emergency number, and then uh, they had to ask where the I guess local uh, clinic nearest clinic was. So I remember them taking me, and basically when I went in, I was bleeding everywhere, and what I do remember is I didn't know I was bleeding when I had fell, and when I got up after falling on that table, I remember the two kids across the street. They were like that, and then I put my hand up to my chin, and I saw the blood, and that's when I started crying, and then my mom came into the room and asked what happened, and one of the kids was like, I gotta go, and the other one was like, yeah, I should go too. He's bleeding. And they took off really quick. I think they were afraid that that they might get in trouble, but it really wasn't their fault. It was an accident. Accidents happen. So so anyway, after my parents took me to the walk-in clinic, They actually had to put a papoose on me and restrain me because when I saw the needle, uh, I flipped out and I was pretty much from that point on. I actually had a phobia of needles, and it's kind of funny because I had that phobia up until I was about 13 years old, and just one day when I was 13, I got over it, but uh, that's how I got this. Well, that isn't actually how I got that. I got that much later on in my life. I didn't get it underage, but um, I got over my phobia, is what I'm saying. Um, but when they stitched up my chin, they said that if I had hit that table any harder, I could have broke my jaw. And they had to put stitches in my chin, and from that point on, I had a phobia of needles. And then when I had my heart surgery, you can't really see it. Well, you can right there. You can actually see the scar. When I had my heart surgery, I was 5 years old. It was 1989, and the number of times that I had to go in for blood work and they had to draw blood, they had to put me in papooses, they had to restrain me. At one point, they didn't actually think that they were going to be able to do surgery because of my phobia with needles, and so I really fought them tooth and nail, and I even told them at a few points that I didn't want the surgery. They didn't listen, and I wasn't really given much choice. So, but uh, I remember that when they put me they under the gas mask or whatever, they were asking me really stupid questions that I wasn't concerned about. I really didn't care. I didn't want any of it done. I mean, the types of questions that they were asking me is, "Oh, do you want to be a clown? Do you want to be an astronaut?" It's like, you know what? I remember those things because it's fucking traumatizing. That's why I remember it. So, you know, I tell my story, and every time I tell the story, people try to change it, or they try to say, "Oh, well, that didn't happen, that didn't happen, that happened, then this happened, that happened." Well, okay. So anyway, I'm gonna tell my story the way it actually happened. Okay, they put the mask on, and I fell asleep. They cut me open, and while I was asleep, and this is the part where everyone says, "Oh, well, that never happened. You weren't there. You're not me, so you don't know. You don't have the slightest idea. So keep your mouth shut." So, anyway, while I was asleep, I could see my body being cut open. I could see me being lifted up above my body. And I entered this, like, blackish sphere. And it was. The best way I could describe it, it kind of looked like a really big black liquid bubble. Just solid black. Like I mean, just is, well, I want to say as black as. I don't really have anything here I can show you. I want to say pitch black. I mean, just so black that you couldn't see it. There was no transparency between inside, well, not inside, but between the outside to the inside. I could see out, but it was like you couldn't see in. So, anyway, I was lifted up into this black bubble, and when I got inside this black bubble, I looked down, and it was like I was standing on water, and there was ripples. And when I was inside this black bubble, I could see my body, I could see them operating. And during that time, they didn't have the right size patch. I was on that operating table for at least 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours, because they actually had to fly in a patch because they didn't have the right size. And they had to stop my heart, and they had to cycle blood. They had an oxygen tube like inside me, and they had all kinds of wires hooked up to my head, and I could see all this, but I didn't know what was really going on. And when I was watching my body, I looked up and I saw this. I saw this figure. It was in a. It was almost in a black cloak, as black as the bubble itself, and it didn't have a face. Now, it. This is where it gets really strange, because when I say this, people say, "Oh, well, that's you saw death." And here's the thing: if it was death, where was his like stick and with the blade on it? I don't know. Maybe there's different depictions, but what I saw was I saw this black figure, no face, and it had a book in its hand. And the book that I saw, it was like all leather on the outside, and it had like this. It had like this oak tree carved into it, and I was like, I was 5 years old. I didn't know what was going on. I assumed that. I assumed that maybe I was dead because I was seeing this. Well, this figure doesn't say anything. He's just standing there, like staring at me. Although I couldn't really tell if he was staring at me because I couldn't see the face. I mean, the face was like almost as black. All I could see was like the outline. So I see the book open, and then I see a sleeve move, and I see the book open, and that's when this being or entity spoke to me. And all it said was, a blank page. And he closed the book with one hand. Or, well, I'm going to assume it was one hand. I couldn't even see his hands. So he closed the book, looked right at me, looked down, and he said, "Your task isn't complete." And the only thing I remember is I was standing there, and at one point I remember waking up for a split second, and I sat up on the table, and the doctor actually had to put me back down. And this was while the surgery was going on. My chest cavity was like open. I mean, I didn't sit all the way up, but like I was starting to sit up, so they had to put me back under. And my heart was stopped, and they were like, they were shocked. And then when I went back under again, it was like I was instantly transported back into this bubble, and then this being was still there, and he was standing there watching, and he asked me what was wrong, and the only thing I remember saying was what task, what blank page, and he wouldn't tell me. He just stood there and said, I can't say. It never really occurred to me what that being was and what that book was until later. Much later. When I say much later, I mean years later. You know, I I started hearing stories about near-death experiences, and then I started hearing stories about people seeing the angel of death and all this, and then it dawned on me. I finally realized what that being was. Now, people say, oh, well, that was just your mind, because of the lack of oxygen, and it was just a facilitating for it, and no, this was much more than that. Like I said, you weren't there, you weren't me, so you don't know, so just, keep your mouth shut, because unless you were in my position, you have honestly no idea what I went through. So, anyway, during the entire operation, when I looked down the second time, I did notice one other thing. Whoever or wherever they got the patch flown in from, when the guy came in to the operating room with the box or the ice chest or whatever it was with the patch, it he was in camo fatigues, like a military outfit. And I thought it was a little strange because usually, people don't walk around in fatigues unless they're on duty or on base or at a drill or something. So, you know, I always asked about it, and I don't know. I'm here, I'm alive, and I don't really question that part. But what I do question is the fact that what I really saw, it was almost like the only reason why he let me come back is because he made a pact with me. Because there are parts of the story I am going to purposely leave out, because if I really told you the full-fledged story, you might think that it's not humanly possible for me to be here right now. So let's just say that this being said that I had a blank page, and it would make sense because, when you look at the book of life, and for every action that you commit into this world, for everything that you do is all recorded in the book of life, and each being has their own page. Every human. So it's possible that he looked at this book and he saw it was blank, but why wasn't there anything in there for the first 5 years? you kind of have to ask yourself and wonder, you know, what is my destiny? What am I supposed to be doing? Because he wouldn't tell me. I don't know for certain. He never told me. I never knew then, and I still don't know. And I just kind of have to wonder, what is it that I'm really supposed to be doing while I'm alive? Why was I even allowed to live if I had a blank page to begin with? And I don't know. I mean, I try not to worry about it, but I do question it because it was just, it was literally one of the strangest things that had ever happened to me. And I'm alive now, and it's just one of those things. So that was, I mean, that was pretty much it. And when I woke up finally, I was awake, and I never told my parents this until later on. And of course, my parents don't believe me. They really don't. They'd rather, well, my dad would rather look at the scientific facts of it. And he's the type of person that would say, "Oh well, it was just your brain accommodating for error and blah blah blah." And I'm just like, you know what? You're not me. You weren't there. So again, keep your mouth shut. But I'm sure there are other people out there that would say the same thing. And you know what? Once again, you weren't there. You're not me. So don't even bother saying anything. But regardless, I'm alive, and I'm sure at this point you're all thinking I'm crazy, and I for the most part, hope you enjoyed my story, even though it may or may not make made any sense. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them down below, and feel free to subscribe, like, favorite, and share this with friends and family. And if you know anything about my experience or my encounter, which I seriously doubt you would, but if you do, feel free to contact me and let me know about it. Thank you for watching and listening to my story.